Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Adam Cohen with Information Builders, and I'm joined today by Dan Wilson, who is the ISV Business Development Manager at Cloudera. And today we're going to talk about big data, what it is, how businesses can derive value from it, especially around Information Builders, WebFocus, and iWay, and certainly what the unique value proposition of Cloudera and Hadoop are, where we've worked together, and then how you as an organization can get started with Cloudera through a great free trial that they have. So with that, Dan, if you could talk a little bit about who Cloudera is, that would be great.
Thanks very much, Adam, and thanks for inviting us onto today's call, and thanks also to all those listening in for taking time out of your busy schedule. So Cloudera, very simply put, is an enterprise software company headquartered out of California, been around about 8 years now. We focus on helping our customers, those are enterprise customers across any variety of industries and around the globe. We focus on helping them drive either better customer insight, lower their business risk, deliver products and services more efficiently by improving their operations, and also modernize their entire data architecture, especially around their data management platform. How we do this is by leveraging both some of the key components of the open source Hadoop community, which has been one of the key drivers of big data over the past few years. We leverage that integrated platform on which we perform a lot of test and quality and continued development, and focus on making it fast, easy, and secure for our customers and partners to deploy, so that companies that have those needs and that big data opportunities don't have to go out and engage and build up very complex skills, and probably don't have those skills available that other internet firms that had started off with Hadoop had in the past. So that focus on fast, easy, and secure is very much where Cloudera spends all of its time and brain power.
Dan, what recommendations do you have around an enterprise data strategy in terms of guiding the way organizations manage this invaluable data for analytics?
Yeah, that's a hugely important thing to look at, and one that we feel as Cloudera, as we've been driving this market forward and working with some of the most innovative and data-driven enterprise companies out there, we feel we have some very strong kind of insight into. And it is true, there are various numbers out there. You have some here on the slide, and Gartner also says that around 50% of big data projects are going to struggle to get beyond the pilot phase in the coming year. And so when we look at how the most successful companies have gotten involved and driven value from their big data projects, there's really a few key aspects that we see out there, and there's nothing that's that different. It's a lot of it is around assembling the right team, getting the right architecture around there. But also, I think one of the key things around big data is the idea of adopting a more agile approach, and there's some of the key aspects of the technology platform that drive that as well. But first of all, the right team is always a key aspect. We've talked a little bit in previous questions around the value. The most successful projects are all those that have a business value goal behind this, so where their people are starting off on these projects with a key idea, a key goal of either reducing cost or increasing revenue or lowering their risk, and with a key area of value that they're driving towards, whether that's improving operational efficiency, driving customer insight, or lowering their risk, as I mentioned before. So the key things to drive that team obviously have to do with the fact that the project teams are fully engaged and aligned as to what the business goal is behind these big data projects. And we have more than enough use cases within our customer base that prove that it is possible, that the ROI is there, and there is huge value in big data. And so, of course, we continue to work with our customers on understanding understanding which of those value drivers would be most important for them, and then which technologies would play into those most closely. The right architecture, as I mentioned, because of Cloudera's focus on making Hadoop fast, easy, and secure, we believe we've proven out in the market, very, very strongly the added value in working with a market leader like Cloudera, both in terms of our strong integration with the Hadoop ecosystem and our strong leadership as we continue to drive the open source ecosystem forward, but also, of course, as I said, our own focus on making that platform incredibly easy for enterprises to adopt and incredibly easy to integrate with their current investments like information builders, make it a very compelling architecture going forward. And then the final part around advice on how to be successful, as I mentioned, is really around that agile approach. So that has to do with some of the key characteristics of the Hadoop platform, which we'll get onto a little bit later. But the fact that Hadoop allows you to load data in and have it stored and managed before necessarily having a full idea of the queries and the analysis is going to be run is one of the key things that drive the benefits of an agile approach. So the fact that you do have what is referred to as a schema on read rather than a schema on write that you would have with traditional enterprise data warehouse architectures means that there's a lot of benefit in getting that first data set in and getting that first advanced analytics module or that first algorithm running against the platform just to really try it out. So a lot of our customers will start off with, the free download of a Cloudera Data Hub, which we'll refer to at the end, and just really start to iterate upon that and then bring in more data types, bring in more business units, and really build value from there. So if anything, that agile approach is really a key one for teams to be successful in deploying big data and generating value for their business from big data.
I think that's great, Dan, and that addresses all the things on this chart in terms of the skills gap and finding value and, starting small, simplifying, but then getting to those enterprise massive scale implementations. So I think it's great that Cloudera in particular can allow you to start small and really prove out the use case, which is tremendous in terms of taking on a new technology. Dan, what traditional business analytics, business intelligence, and data warehouse concepts apply easily to Hadoop, especially for Cloudera around your ease of use and the security and all of the unique features that Cloudera brings to Hadoop?
Yeah. No, thanks for the question, and it's an important one to realize. As a lot of people listening in here have, some likely good background in the data warehouse and business intelligence space. And we've been around, all of us, for a while in that data management space, and some of these concepts, as far as they apply to analytics and to data management, do continue and carry over to the Hadoop world. So it's important for people listening in who may have a good background and understanding of the data warehouse space that a lot of their tools and knowledge is going to apply very, very easily as they move forward, with, of course, some slight distinctions that are out there. So the Hadoop world and ecosystem, first of all, did spend a lot of time over the past 3 or 4 years really investing in providing a more useful interface for BI and data warehouse professionals, meaning providing a SQL interface. Hadoop started off with more foundational components around the HDFS distributed file system and MapReduce and a programming framework, but as we've added more and more SQL interfaces, in particular I want to point out Cloudera's Impala project, which is now an Apache incubating project, but really to drive that unique and highly differentiated interactive high concurrent SQL-based access to data stored in the Hadoop platform. It's one example of continued innovation that makes the Hadoop platform very, very accessible for BI professionals, since it continues to be just a simple SQL interface. They can continue to work with their familiar tools and continue to access and give access and thus value to their business users in that data as well. So if you think about it at a high level, a company is still going to have to go through, as they did with a data warehouse, the usual steps of integrating data, centralize it into a single place, integrating it accessing it from their source systems, some sort of ETL and transformation, exposing a presentation layer of their data, and then delivering it up to the BI applications. All of those steps are going to need to happen. The big difference with Hadoop, or several differences really with Hadoop, is that even though there are some parallels there, as far as, of course, presenting the SQL layer as an interface for a catalog and dealing with, traditional data storage files, you are going to have much more flexibility and far more options as far as how you do that, meaning that, for example, the integration components or how data is brought into the system are really built from the ground up for high volume access. Of course, these were originally built for web technologies, but that applies just as much now for people dealing with sensor data or huge volumes of customers interacting over mobile. So that integration of huge volumes is built into the platform itself. The platform also allows you to do not just ETL, but what we refer to as ELT, so loading and then transforming the data after it's been stored in Hadoop. It refers back to my previous point of how people can iterate on their analysis and not have to wait for a data warehouse schema to be fully defined before they can load and access that data and then start doing basic discovery onto it. Of course, for BI professionals, there's still a huge amount of value in them continuing to work around efficient data access schemas, efficiently modeling and storing their data in columnar format so that the performance can be optimized over time using the Impala interface. So those skills will be very applicable, continue to be applicable going forward as SQL queries continue to be optimized as well. But also, as I said, that ability to not just apply SQL models, but we have customers, for example, using search-based paradigms, or what could be referred to as fuzzy matching, as data doesn't match 100% in the traditional SQL world. We've very often been stuck with a rather non-flexible binary match, so either data matches or it doesn't. If you introduce frameworks based on search, you get a lot more flexibility and a lot more fuzzy matching capabilities potentially at a very efficient way, so that data can be matched at a much higher quality using more intelligent algorithms, for example, there as well. So those are just a few examples of some of the differences that Hadoop allows you to do. But again, a lot of those concepts of how data is managed and moved on different stages is going to continue to be exactly the same. And then most importantly, obviously, for this audience is then that BI presentation layer, where we do a tremendous amount of work with the Information Builder's Web Focus tool on making sure that those tools can leverage the full richness of the Apache Impala interface and derive very efficient and high-performant queries to really deliver that value that's stored in that big data to the large audiences that are traditionally served by, for example, the Web Focus platform.
So one of the places where Cloudera and Information Builders have worked together is with a digital media and marketing solutions company based in Canada. They serve about 260,000 small and medium-sized businesses across Canada and its provinces. It's a free solution that takes advantage of Cloudera, and what they've done is they've moved all their data into Cloudera, and they've created with Web Focus very user-friendly dashboards that make all of the digital analytics accessible. And what their customers are able to do is see how many visitors are coming to their website, how long they're staying, what they're interacting with on that, where they're clicking through, and then what it allows this vendor to do is turn around and utilize these user stats to optimize performance across various media campaigns and really generate ROI and revenue as people do drop-ins to these stores or these websites. And it's improved decision-making for both these individual merchants as well as on a management basis for this vendor. So it's a great application. There's videos of it on our website that you can look through, and it is a great use case for both information builders and Cloudera. And Dan, you've talked a lot about time to value, and you know, I think for our listeners and viewers, they'd really like to know the value of Hadoop-based analytics for their organization.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to go and measure that, and most importantly, as you put up here, I think it's always important to focus on simplifying these things and making them accessible for both the IT teams and business teams that you're dealing with. But there are really a number of different metrics that customers and our joint customers look at when they're trying to evaluate that value. Those metrics are always based around either reducing cost, increasing revenue, or reducing risk. So there's a couple of things that drive to that. So it could be either larger amounts of data. So for example, people who are analyzing 100% of the transactions versus maybe often we come across customers who have been analyzing 30% of transactions because of various storage limitations and performance limitations. That itself, analyzing 100% of data, is good ways to drive towards lowering risk by having full visibility and not using sampling approaches. More data types, we've alluded to already in the retail banking example of bringing in, for example, web chats into your analysis and not leaving that outside. So it's either value that's going to be based, again, in volume, in types of data, and then also importantly, the time to insight as well by using different frameworks on the same data platform. So as I mentioned before, that ability to put in SQL interfaces and then come in and do machine learning and data science on exactly the same source of data without needing to move that is going to help you move very quickly from the analytics side of looking at what has happened to really look more future and prescriptive of what might happen in the future, what will happen in the future. So that very, very importance of going not just from descriptive analytics but to prescriptive, all within the same platform and on the same framework, becomes key as well. The other things that we've also been able to do in terms of delivering value can be seen as very simple from an IT perspective in modernizing architecture. So very often what's happened in the past as people have built up data warehouse architectures, they've actually still kept a lot of the data processing and movement and transfer and transformation of data on that data warehouse side. So we're able to really simplify that by offering up dedicated modules that are part of the platform to address that heavy lifting and transformation of data and take the load off of more expensive dedicated analytical systems on the data warehouse space, and with all the goal of reducing the time to insight and therefore increasing value. So again, back to how customers should think about the value, it always starts with the business side of things as to whether they're going to be able to reduce cost, increase revenue, or reduce risk. But again, there are some key metrics that are going to back those up in terms of either increasing amounts of data or variety of data, or being able to more quickly go through the cycle of descriptive to prescriptive analytics.
Why is Hadoop important for analytics?
So Hadoop plays a huge role in customers' analytics projects, mainly because it allows people not only to collect huge amounts, much larger amounts of information and data than was specifically possible, but it also allows them to go and analyze very different forms of data and perform different types of analysis on that. So it's really that ability to store not just volume variety, but also run a number of frameworks against that and a huge number of tools, and some of the tools and projects that are within the Hadoop framework are flashing up right now as we're walking through this. So a lot of these have been developed to help drive new types of analysis on new types of data. So traditionally, in legacy architectures, the cost and complexity of moving through those different tools and those different frameworks of applying, for example, SQL-based queries followed by R or advanced analytics type queries and machine learning on that same data would mean you'd have to step through a number of different tools and a number of different architectures, which would cause brittleness, which would cause delays and complexity as far as the architecture. And so it really was, reducing reducing the speed and increasing the time to insight unless you knew exactly what you were going to look for in advance. So, the data warehouse in the past played that main role as the repository for all data used for analytics, and I very much like the baking analogy. You had exactly all the ingredients in the right proportions that were there, but there was very little room for adjustment or for adding in new data, and your queries or your analysis wouldn't come out right. But today, most organizations are dealing with a huge number of different streams of data, a huge number of different inputs, and that's also driven, of course, by how their customers are interacting with them in turn. More and more, as you know, every time you interact with any particular significant purchase, you're interacting with a company and evaluating a product under a number of different streams and probably talking with that vendor on the phone, online, in a physical store. All of those things generate huge amounts of data for that company to try and gather, but it makes that complexity of analysis and complexity of tracking you as a customer incredibly difficult. There's a couple of examples there. There's huge value hidden in that data, and people know it. I don't think there's any doubt in most people's mind that if they could get at that data, analyze it, there's a huge amount of information there. And there's great examples, out there within our customer base. So, for an example, something like web chat, web chat that has been around seemingly on most retail and consumer-oriented websites for quite a while. That type of information is always maintained and held within, the service call or maybe a customer service ticket. There's a huge amount of insight that could be analyzed across all of those. So we have an example of a retail bank in the UK who was finally, thanks to Hadoop and that ability to both store varied forms of data but analyze them using different frameworks, they were able to get a visibility across all of their weblog chats, and through that they believe generate, in terms of reduction of customer service and improving quality, they've already within the last 6 months estimated their savings at about £7 million per year. So the value there is really huge, and the data, as I said, is out there for all customers to kind of start and leverage. And again, working with Cloudera and our partners is really how we believe organizations are able to tap into that and get those kinds of ROI and that value out of analytics extremely quickly.
Okay, Dan, let's talk a little bit about how Cloudera works with Information Builder's products.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a great example of some of our own focus on enabling and enriching kind of our partner ecosystem as well. It's one of the area where I obviously focus, but where the company overall has put a huge amount of effort in collaborating very closely with key partners in the market and making sure that our joint customers can deploy these solutions very easily and successfully. One little kind of joke apart, I know some of your colleagues on the product side I sometimes joke about how we put them through the ringer as far as our technology certification, so it's also something that's extremely rigorous and detailed as far as making sure the solutions work very, very closely together. So it's a couple of different ways that we work with information builders depending on, again, kind of the customer scenario. So both key areas of the information builders kind of product family are great ways to help get more data into the Hadoop Cloudera platform and obviously to get value out of it. So there's a couple of things there that we've mentioned. So the web-focused BI and analytics platform, first of all, is one of the integration points that we built there around the Impala interface. So Impala, as we've mentioned, is the most performant, interactive, and high concurrency SQL interface out there in the Hadoop ecosystem, and it's a core part of the Cloudera Enterprise Data Hub suite product family as well. So one of the key areas where we do a lot of work with information builders is again, making it very easy for customers who use WebFocus to connect into to Cloudera through the Impala interface and build rich analytics and reports directly on the data rather than having to move it out into another data warehouse or data mart, and really give that, use the rich functionality of WebFocus to give self-service BI and broad reporting on the large volumes of data that are stored in Hadoop directly. And the key work we do there is making sure, obviously, the full security model is fully recognized and respected at all levels throughout the application. Of course, making sure that access is controlled on a true row and column based level through the tools as well. But otherwise, a lot of our focus there is on the performance and the scalability of the joint solutions. The other very interesting work we do a lot with, we've been working a lot recently with the Information Builders team, is around the iWay ETL and integration tools. So obviously there the question of getting data into the Hadoop platform is similar to any data warehouse type of approach, where we need to connect into source systems and bring data into the platform. The interesting thing there is iWay offers the flexibility of either doing some of the transformation upstream, but also in a lot of cases now doing that transformation inside of Hadoop and really benefiting from that huge distributed compute platform that Cloudera offers up to any application. So customers also benefit there from a much simpler architecture rather than having to have an infrastructure dedicated just to ETL and then a separate infrastructure dedicated to kind of storing and serving that analysis. They can leverage the entire Cloudera platform and run those different frameworks against the platform at different points, and thus get much more efficient and simpler architectures through that as well. So with the iWay tool, allows people to leverage the standard Hadoop components such as Scoop and Flume to bring data into the platform. But very interestingly, we're starting to see iWay let it help us go beyond the simple integration and bringing components such as data quality and others from the rich ETL history that you guys have as well, to again help simplify and improve the architecture as far as integrating and then transforming data once it's inside the platform as well.
Dan, how can our customers and interested parties get started with Cloudera?
We'll be happy, obviously, to engage, and both ourselves and information builders, have representation in well over 20 countries, and people happy to help out there in the field. But also importantly, we have a huge number of ways to try out the Cloudera Enterprise Data Hub platform. So it is available as a free download on the site that you can see there, either in a Docker or a quick start virtual machine.
Well, thank you all for your time today. We really appreciate your spending your time with us.